Welcome to Edge Industry Review Fireside Chat. I'm Jim Davis, editor of Edge Industry Review. Alkira, earlier this year, launched services it calls cloud area networking, described as a next generation network that offers edge to cloud connectivity. The service is built in the cloud and requires no hardware to buy or agents to install, and will allow enterprises to programmatically build connectivity from the office to multiple clouds. Now, networks are critical to the edge computing ecosystem. Edge services, at some time or another, typically connect to other devices and other applications via a network. So, we wanted to ask about what cloud area networking is and how it is similar or not to SD-WAN services that we're familiar with, and to find out about Alkira's view of edge computing and networks. So, today we're talking with Amir Khan, founder and CEO of Alkira. Welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for having me on your show.
So it is pretty ambitious to start a company and go up against huge networking companies, some of which you've worked before, and to talk about reinventing cloud networking. That's a lot to do. Tell me about what Alkira is doing and how it's different from other approaches in the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's start off with the SD-WAN. It was a completely different solution, which was done to optimize the private connectivity for wide area networking to interconnect branches to data centers and to the clouds. So everything from SD-WAN perspective was done to sit outside of the cloud. And if you wanted to extend things inside the cloud, you would just deploy some virtual instances, stitch them together to tunnels, which is not necessarily optimizing or building a cloud network. So majority of the existing vendors are using that approach, and that doesn't solve any problems for the customer. It becomes very tedious very quickly. As an example, Coke Industries had built their own infrastructure inside Equinix facilities to come to the cloud. And then they started deploying virtual instances from Cisco and Palo Alto and other companies to build their infrastructure inside the cloud. Very quickly realized that it was so intertwined and static configurations to interconnect tunnels between these devices. And policy was a nightmare. Simple things like segmentation was a nightmare. You could not do any day two operations properly because that became so tedious. So essentially, the cloud was not ready for the network piece that the enterprises wanted. So no enterprise class, carrier class capabilities from networking perspective inside the cloud. Now, mind you, the capabilities of the cloud from raw bandwidth, compute, storage, applications is enormously valuable. But how the networking solutions are provided is very ancient, I would say, compared to what the customers wanted. So we embarked upon this journey to optimize the clouds, and especially in the multi-cloud environment, because each cloud was doing things differently, and create a common infrastructure. So think of us as a cloud sitting inside clouds to create an abstraction layer to bring multiple clouds together from the computer networking perspective. So all the practices that the enterprises are used to deploy firewalls, to do routing, to do IPAM services, we are a new age service provider which solves all those problems for the customers, to the point that now Coke Industries is 100% deployed in their centralized IT environment on the Alkira solution. They continue to grow with us in the clouds with our environment. So we take over the cloud piece, the network piece in the clouds, and then customers only have to worry about the VPCs and what type of instances they spin up inside the clouds. And the rest of it becomes very, I would say, seamless and simple, and as a service. So you don't have to worry about any software upgrades by deploying so many different types of nodes. You don't have to deploy any software. It's just as a service, just like an app. That has never happened in the networking industry before. And all our competitors are still doing things in a very traditional manner, or our customers end up doing DIY solutions in the cloud, and both are very tedious and they don't meet the requirements of the futuristic, digital transformation or building the solutions for a very dynamic, agile business environment to serve their business needs. So networking teams just without fail end up becoming a hindrance in cloud adoption.
Now, I've certainly heard a number of companies describe what they offer as network as a service, which
Hmm.
sounds cloud-like. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe you can describe again, what are some of the differences in terms of, say, programmability and as you say, use the word
Hmm.
dynamic networking.
Yeah. So network as a service is used as a very loose term nowadays, right? So people who offer hardware and they are starting to provide pricing models to adopt hardware in a certain way, and they call it network as a service. There are people who are deploying the hardware and automating it, and again, that sits in outside the hyperscalers to build their own cloud and provide services to connect to the cloud. A lot of those guys are also calling it network as a service. And then there are solutions which are built inside the cloud to orchestrate things the way cloud providers have done. So no commonality. They just do overlay solutions like that from SD-WAN players, right? Very similar to that, where the customer is still stuck with upgrading all the software, deploying all the policies themselves, doing a lot of static configuration, and those solutions don't scale for the, what from the perspective the customers need. No high availability built in. Customers have to do their own high availability, etc. So that's what we solve for. We solve for a very comprehensive enterprise class, carrier class infrastructure inside the cloud for the cloud, as well as for hybrid environments and remote users in one way. And on top of that, we allow customers to secure and deploy higher layer services to control those services. As an example, one of our customers is going down from 80 firewalls to 16 in our environment because of the way we optimize the traffic in the clouds.
That ought to offer a pretty significant cost savings in and of itself.
Oh yes, oh yes. Another customer used to use 200 megabit per second, and that customer just talked about it at the Open Network User Group conference across the globe from a provider, which was very expensive private connectivity over MPLS-like constructs, and interregion is pretty much free in the cloud. So once they started using our solution across multiple regions across the globe, they transferred all their traffic to us. And by virtue of us standardizing and consolidating things, they saved 6 times on latency. That is pretty impressive. And their performance issues went away because performance raw capabilities from bandwidth perspective in the cloud are enormous. And we provided SLA, which were much better compared to what they were getting from these current providers.
Yeah, we've seen oftentimes that enterprises have performance issues and think that they need just more bandwidth to solve those issues, but it's not solving really for latency.
Yeah,
Um, I guess I don't know how to approach this
yeah,
in a
I hear
hybrid
you.
world,
Right.
because things are more complicated. There's more data centers. Those cloud
Yes,
providers aren't all in the same data centers, even if they might be all
right.
in Virginia. Um,
Yeah. So a lot of times what happens is because of the suboptimality of how things are deployed between data centers and the cloud, the traffic ends up tromboning between different locations, right? And because of the optimizations that we do, the customer ends up saving a lot on the latency as well. As a matter of fact, we were surprised ourselves how, inefficient the current way of doing things was compared to when we deployed our solution. It was amazing to see that.
so, can you tell me a little bit about how your your vision of cloud area networking applies to edge computing scenarios? Maybe it's using edge AI in a manufacturing plant. How does I don't know if there's some other examples that you can provide that talk about how you're going to help simplify edge networking as well as that centralized cloud.
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, all of the cloud providers are deploying their mobile edge locations as well as edge locations, at least in the NFL cities and beyond, right? So as that starts to happen, there are things like multi-protocol label switching offerings, which will slowly start to fade away because customers will have majority of the compute and storage sitting in the clouds anyways. so they can hop onto a business class internet connection into the clouds very quickly, and thereby reducing the need to utilize those types of services, which are very expensive and slow right now. And remember, SD-WAN solved for that already by mixing internet, which was low cost, no SLA, high speed, versus MPLS, which was high cost, low bandwidth, and high SLA, right? So we created a secure fabric to create a mix of those environments. And so customers are already used to coming over business class internet to interconnect their wide area services. So they are very comfortable using that to come into the cloud as well. So that's one piece of it for enterprise on-premise locations and remote users to come into the cloud as quickly as possible. Second piece is there are applications which require low latency capabilities, extremely low latency, right, for real-time applications. So whether it's cars or traffic lights, or cars trying to figure out if the traffic lights have a certain behavior, right, or IoT devices trying to figure out things which need to be very extremely low latency. Those types of applications need to reside at the edge. But majority of the other applications, cloud is already the new edge for them. So all the network function virtualization is already being done in the cloud, and the latency requirements for those applications are not as stringent. So for real-time applications, which require extreme low latencies and extreme fast processing, yes, the cloud at the edge is going to make a lot of sense, and we are ready for that, and we are already expanding our infrastructure to the cloud edge locations.
So would something like AWS local zones or outposts be a deployment scenario for you already, or is that something off in the future?
Well, I mean, the Outpost is basically they extend that on-premise, I believe, and
Mm-hmm.
and as the cloud extends into the on-premise locations, because of the virtual nature of our solution, it's completely virtualized end to end. It's easy for us to extend over the Outpost type deployments into the data centers or into branch locations. So that certainly I see that in the future, because what I see is the current way of doing networking becomes plumbing, right? It's a physical infrastructure to get you there. And then all the intelligence is going to reside in cloud like constructs. And that's where Amazons of the world or Microsofts or Googles of the world are going to tremendously help by extending their cloud constructs into on premise locations. So think of the future as an end to end virtualized environment with much better control over the overall infrastructure from network perspective as well as from compute and storage and applications perspective.
Well, and here's the other side of the side of the coin. When we increase the number of locations that we're doing compute and have more network endpoints, we can wind up increasing the attack surface. So, can you tell me a little bit about your approach to security and networking?
Yeah. So that's a very important question. As I said earlier, one of our customers is reducing 80 firewalls to 16, is how we allow the customers to deploy firewalls now and how intelligent our infrastructure is. Simple thing, traffic goes through one firewall. How do you bring it back through the same firewall? So the poor customer today ends up deploying firewalls inline. So the traffic touches many firewalls going to the endpoint and coming back through all those same firewalls. With the smart or intelligent policy infrastructure that we have built, our our cloud, our network cloud is stateful. So it knows what firewall the traffic went through and how it needs to come back through that firewall. So simple things like that, customers are having a tough time deploying today. And then how do you make it elastic? Today, people provision for peak utilization. So let's say it's a retail company during the holiday season, the traffic increases. But for the regular season, they don't need that much firewall capacity. So the poor customers are stuck with deploying for peak utilization, which is very, very expensive. So with us, we make it elastic in the cloud so that you can deploy one or two virtual machines and they go up and down in number as the traffic requirements go up and down. Right. So those types of things we've all solved. And then you can steer the traffic through firewalls in a very simple very powerful policy construct that we have built end to end. And it's very visual, and you can also control it through automation through Terraform type scripting. So it's a very comprehensive infrastructure that we've built from that perspective, and that's why our customers are enjoying so much cost savings and optimization of how they're building their network in the cloud.
Can you describe for me a little bit about what are the boundaries between what you do and the firewalls? I mean, are you offering your own security technology, or are you partnering with other
No,
companies?
so we don't believe in doing intertwining of different layers of capabilities, right? So we want a clear delineation between connectivity and higher layer services like firewalls or IPAM services, etc. When a company tries to do too much, those solutions are integrated solutions, and we have seen that they can only work so well in maybe small deployments or so majority of our customers utilize best of breed solutions. So our customers either use Palo Alto firewalls or Cisco or Checkpoint, and they want to use them for on-premise as well as for cloud locations. They don't want to intermix firewalls. They want strict control and distributed centralization by regions of these firewall capabilities so that you don't have to deploy firewalls everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's another way that the customers are securing their boundaries better, because as you rightly pointed out, the cloud, attack surface increases if you don't control things properly. And that's what our solution does, is provide a very clear architecture for centrally distributing the resources by region, not necessarily by every edge location, unless you have to do that. And even if you do that, only traffic that requires the edge location to process it for security will do that. Otherwise, you can go through the centralized resources, which may or may not be as expensive, right? So it's a very optimal solution and gives a lot of control to the customer as to how they want to deploy it in a very simple manner. Mind you, in engineering, as you know, it's always very difficult to build a solution which is simple, and it's very easy to overly complicate things. So this time, we went out of our way to make sure that we have the simplest solution across, which can be deployed across the globe in less than an hour. Today, if you deploy a networking solution, it takes months or years, right? And even with our competitors or DIY, it can take months to deploy the solution, right? And that's how simple we have made it. But that means that all the complexity we have taken into account in the underlying infrastructure.
Well, it seems like there's some testament to that. Not a lot of companies come out of startup mode and have some of the named customers that you already have.
Yes.
So I guess it must be true that what you're saying about the product being easy to use. What were some of the companies that you've already talked about
Yeah.
in terms of customers that have
So,
deployed the service?
yeah, and I mean, we can talk all day long, and unless we have really real deployments, solution is not real, right? So we have Coke, which has their central IT department that is 100% deployed with Alkira, even though they are one of the largest cloud providers for multiple clouds, right? They may be in one cloud more than the other right now, but their whole cloud infrastructure, from the networking perspective, we take over that piece. And for the cloud, they only pay for VPCs and VNets. So all the, because it's our infrastructure, we control that environment, and they're very, very happy with that. They're growing with us. They're 100% deployed in that piece, and future growth is all through us. And now there are multiple other companies within Coke who are going with our solution as well, along with the centralized IT team. That's one example. Chart Industries was up on the stage at ONUG with us, and they just talked about how we have solved their IoT problems. There are many customers who are having problems with mergers, right? End-to-end segmentation is not easy to deploy in the cloud, especially across clouds and hybrid environments. We solve for that. There are many companies who are deploying our solution for onboarding multiple partners because they provide services to different other companies. So let's say they have 1,000 or 1,500 partners that they want to onboard and selectively share resources. Not easy to do. They have to utilize equipment from many different vendors today, and we solve for that at large scale. So traffic coming in from the internet to consume resources in the cloud or hybrid environment, we centrally distribute that and provide better controls for that. Remote users, automatically distributing remote users across the globe based on their location, right? Simple things like that are not very easy to deploy today. So it goes on and on and on because we have a very comprehensive solution. People solve for different things. It's just like when you're deploying a routed solution from Cisco, all the applications work through that. And you would deploy it in a historical, very traditional manner to solve similar type of problems. But it's so tedious that it would take months or years for you to deploy that, right? And now you don't have to worry about it. By the way, the biggest challenge the customers had once I was talking to a bank is software upgrades. They go through a software upgrade, a vulnerability hits, and they have to go through 5,000 locations again, right? So we are solving for all these problems by centrally distributing the applications or higher layer services, so people don't have to deploy everything at at every branch or every on-premise location, right? So thereby giving much better control to the customers. So I can go on for I'm so excited about this stuff for a long, long time. But I hope it gives you the message of what we are trying to do here.
It does, and congratulations on the success you've had so far. It's certainly a challenging business environment, so being able to make that kind of progress already
Yeah,
is a testament
and
to what you're doing. I just want
right.
to say thank you for joining us today, and hope to talk to you soon.
My pleasure, Jim. Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of the day.